Welcome to season 3 of Two Girls with Grief. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Kendall, and together we're just two girls figuring out how to live with grief the best we can.
This season, we wanted to have real conversations about building a beautiful life with grief. Because while grief never fully goes away, we believe it's still possible to build a life that holds love, joy, and even hope alongside it.
Our hope is that these episodes will be a resource for both new and seasoned grievers, whether you're in the early days of loss or years down the road.
And just a reminder, we're not professionals, we're just professional grievers. This is a safe place for honest stories, tools, and reflections that remind you you're not alone in this.
So thank you for being here, for listening, and for letting us share this season with you. We're so grateful you're with us for season 3, Building a Beautiful Life with Grief.
Welcome back to Two Girls with Grief. This episode focuses on how joy doesn't erase grief and how the two can coexist together on your grief journey.
And that's really what this episode is about today, giving ourselves permission to feel joy even while carrying that loss.
Today we're joined by Joseph J., widower to his wife Casey and dad to Annie. Joseph is one of our earliest listeners and has been so open with his grief journey. He recently just passed the 1-year death anniversary of Casey, and we've been so inspired by how proactive he is about prioritizing both his healing and his daughter Annie's.
Welcome to the Two Girls with Grief podcast, Joseph. Thank you so much for being here. We're so happy to have you on. Just to start us off, can you tell us a little bit about Casey and Annie and what the early days of grief looked like for you?
Yeah. Casey was diagnosed with lymphoma in January of 2024, and she battled that until she passed away in September of that year, so about a year ago. Her and I met in college at the University of Iowa, and we had one daughter, Annabelle. Annabelle is currently 7. And so my journey with grief has been about a year in the making. You know, there's a lot of emotions that I had that weren't necessarily grief, but I guess, you know, in the back of your mind, you're always kind of preparing for if the treatments didn't work throughout that whole 3/4 of 2024. My grief journey has been wild and so much learning from it personally, and then you know, seeing what it's like for Annabelle it's been a lot.
Yeah, the first year is the shitty one where you're trying to like figure everything out. And it's also like how a year can feel so fast and so slow all at once. And you talking about the lead up to your wife's passing, it reminds me a lot of that year, my dad, when he passed in October, but he was sick for many months. And it is a horrible feeling to just have to sit there and watch someone go through that pain.
Yeah, and I was reminded last night I'm in a bowling league now, which I'm not a very good bowler.
That's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. But I was talking to Andy, who I work with, and he was saying last night about how he was in a slow pitch softball league last fall, and I don't remember that at all. And so there's this, you know, there's a lot of the last year that seems like a blur, that I wasn't always present and in my own head for what must have been a lot of conversations that I was having with people.
Yeah, Rachel and I talk about that too, about the memory loss and the brain fog of it all. And these are things that they do not prep you for when you lose somebody so close that like you're still having to go through life, but you don't remember any of it. And I have to go back and apologize to people when they're like, "Oh no, we had this conversation or we did this thing together," and I'm like, "We did? Where was I? I
Yeah,
don't remember that."
yeah, and this was the first time that I was like, oh shit, okay, damn, I was really messed up.
We talk about grief brain a lot and look back, I'm like, I feel like I'm still in my 20s because I feel like so much of my 20s is a blur.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, a lot of people still think I'm in my 20s, so that helps. But back to more serious note. So you just crossed the 1-year anniversary mark of Casey.
Yep.
What reflections have you had on the past year, and where do you feel like you are now in your grief journey? But also, did the 1 year feel more significant? Because I think a lot of people put a pressure on 1 year, And I feel like it can be really big, it can be another day, but I feel like sometimes the buildup is the worst part of that.
Probably in August, I started to feel this buildup and this pressure to September 8th. And a lot of it was obviously emotions that I can't believe that it's been a year. And then some fear about how that day was going to feel and what was I going to do and how was I going to honor Casey on that day in a way that she would love and respect. So it was a lot, and I think we did it well. We did a party at my house with all of our close friends and family, and we made food and we cooked and we enjoyed each other's company and we listened to music and we toasted Casey and really did what Casey and I loved to do, which was have people at our house and shower them with food and love, and that's what we did. And so it's kind of weird being on the other side of it now, and I don't know if it's because it's a little over 11 months away from that next second year anniversary, and so it feels more distant. But there definitely is like the before and after that day is a lot of emotion. And somebody told me that you'll feel the emotion on the day that she passed of the day of the week versus the actual number, the calendar day more, which was true for me. Casey passed away on a Sunday at the hospital, and then the 8th was on a Monday. But that Sunday was definitely a lot more reflection and emotional for me than it was on that Monday, the 8th. So I don't know if you guys experienced anything like that, but it did play out that way for me.
There's so much emotions leading up to it might feel a certain way. Looking back, like I don't even remember the 1 year of my sister, my dad, or my mom. I don't even remember what I did, but I know that I used to be so focused on I need to do it a certain way. But also because I've lost so many people, I wasn't celebrating my own days. It was just like at the anniversary, Father's Day, Mother's Day, their birthdays. So for me, I don't really remember it, but I know that there's so much buildup. And then of course, like similarly, your birthday is like right after she passed away. That's what happened to my sister and my mom too, is like it's right after their passings, which is hard to process.
Yeah, my birthday's on September 12th. And last year, Casey passed away on a Sunday. On my birthday, a group of us went out and 12 of us played golf for my birthday. And so we did that again this year. There were 16 of us that went out and played golf and had a great time. But my birthday will never be the same again. And I'm fine with that. That's the way that it is. But my birthday will now always be also about Casey. And so that's obviously new to me too.
We did have a psychic medium on who said, because that's a big complaint that I have, is like birthdays were so big to me. And now I'm like, how do I not feel freaking sad? Because it's not just they passed away before, but it's like they're not there on your birthday. And he said that it's a sign of love if they pass near your birthday, which I'm trying to accept. Like, that's a nice thought. Like, they love you so much that it's kind of like full circle. They leave close to your birth. I still think it's effed up, and I'm not happy. I'm trying to make peace with that thought, though. Like, okay, they love me so much that they are leaving when I entered this earth. I'm trying to make peace with that, but maybe you'll have a better feeling about that. Like, she loved you so much, she left when you entered this world. As like a full circle.
I mean, for me, I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it being around my birthday. It would almost be harder if it was around the holidays, Thanksgiving or Christmas. Thanksgiving was Casey's favorite holiday. I think that would be tougher. And there's a part of me that's kind of happy to just kind of have that week where there's a week out of the year where we can celebrate together.
You always have a better outlook.
I don't know about that, but I think you just got to live in it. It fucking sucks, but you got to live in it.
So this first year has taught you a lot, but what has stood out the most to you about grief and fatherhood and just trying to survive it all?
There's so many things that I've learned. I don't know if I can narrow it down to the most. I think that we did a good job leading up to the end of Casey's life with Annabelle. She knew mom had cancer. And then I think it was Tuesday before then that we knew the end was coming. And so Annabelle and I talked about that on that Tuesday. Casey and I had talked about needing to um, let Annabelle know. So her and I were downtown Iowa City at the Bread Garden, and her and I talked about it. And then that Friday before Casey passed, I had taken Annabelle to school and went to the hospital, and it was clear that it was a lot more imminent than I had hoped. And so that was one of the tougher decisions that I had to make was, do I go get Annabelle from school or not? And I called one of my good friends whose mom had passed away from cancer earlier in the year, and we talked about it. And so I went and got Annabelle from school, and she spent the day at the hospital with us and with Casey's parents, my parents, some of our best friends, and we had just a wonderful day at the hospital. And so one of my takeaways from all of this is that, at least from when I look at how Annie's doing, is that we never shied away from what was going on and what the reality was. And I think that that is a big component to her strength and resolve through all of this, that we talk about mom, and we talk about memories with mom, and we ask ourselves, what would mom do? Because she really was the backbone of not only just Annabelle and I, but like so many of our friends always look to Casey for her advice and how she would think through problems. So we've continued that, and we will continue that forever. And so my biggest thing with my grief process and what I've learned for myself and with Annie is that it's okay to be sad, and it's okay to cry, and it's okay to miss mom, and it's okay to also laugh and smile and to carry on the way that she lived her life.
Yeah, I volunteer at a grief center for children, and it's incredible to see kids having to experience loss of parents or siblings, and they have such a different, almost like stronger sense of loss than as an adult. Obviously, with adult, you understand the complexities of loss and grief, but that these kids are just like so courageous talking about their loss. And it's almost as if society hasn't pressured them to believe something about death that we eventually come to terms with as adults. And it's sad that a child even has to go through that. But every time I volunteer with these kids, I'm reminded, man, there's a strength in these children that like I don't carry. It sucks these kids have to go through such sad things at such young ages. And yet it's inspiring and reminders to myself that like as adults, we have that capacity too. And it sounds like Annie carries that like spirit as well. Like how can a child have to go through this so young, and yet they exemplify like the best parts of what we're going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And she goes to therapy once a week, but I wish she would open up a little bit more with her about her feelings. She gets pretty nervous about it. Life's fucking hard. All of this is what she's got to do to, survive in her own head for the rest of her life as she goes through so many milestones with
A big part of wanting you on the podcast was how careful you are with Annie. And unfortunately, you hear a lot of stories of men that lose their wives and they don't talk about the loss. They don't allow their kids to feel the grief or share the grief or even process it. I think you're really giving Annie all the tools to figure it out. Obviously, there's no cure for losing your mom, and there's no cure for having to do life without your mom, but giving her the best opportunities and tools to figure it out and grow with it, I think is so important. And a lot of people try to pretend that kids aren't affected by loss, but it's like, how can you not be sad or be having a hard time when you lose your mom? So I was joking with Kendall, like it's almost like good father propaganda that we wanted to have on the podcast. I think it's good to show men that can talk about it and share about it and actually are thinking about their kids and not just trying to like pretend that it didn't happen. And I think that's so important to have those conversations. And that's how I would refer to the conversation. I was like, I feel like we kind of need to have these conversations on here where people can see there's ways to help your kids through it. and it's not by pretending that it didn't happen.
Yeah, 100%.
So you mentioned it a little bit, but a lot of grievers talk about guilt, about feeling joy again and feeling moments of happiness. Did you ever feel that?
No, I never did. And all of that is really driven by Casey and who she was. I mean, through the whole time, even leading up to a few days before she passed away, we were joking and laughing and crying and surrounded by our friends, and all we do is say stupid shit and laugh. And so I never felt that way.
I'm grateful for every laugh, happy moment, magical thing that happens, because I also know what really shitty, fucked up things can happen and that you see. So for me, it's never been a conflict. Any happy moment, I'll take it, because I also can cry at a drop of a dime. I think, Kendall, you've experienced that.
Yeah, I've definitely had those, especially at the beginning, feeling a little moment of happiness or like laughter, and then the immediate guilt of like, you should be sad. Like, your dad isn't here to laugh, so why should you be laughing? Which is a fucked up way to think. It's not healthy, but we're not very well educated as a culture, as a society, about how to handle our grief and how to view our grief, how grief affects all parts of our life. And so I think like that is just not an immature, but almost like a default for many people who are new in the grief space and are like, oh, I should be sad because the person I love isn't here to experience this joy with me. So why should I get to experience it at all?
Yeah. Everybody said that we all experience grief differently, and it's said so much, but it is so true. And when I look at how I am getting through and how the other people around me are getting through, even though I may be doing things differently, there's no judgment on the way that they are. We're all different.
Well, and I think there's something beautiful to be said that when a lot of people have this mindset of you can't experience any joy when you're in intense grief, people overcome that hurdle and eventually come to terms with that. To experience joy is the best way to honor the people that we've lost. And so can you share from your experience or your perspective how to see joy as honoring our loved ones, and in your case, Casey, and continuing to like share that love that you've experienced?
I've thought a lot about the saying that, if you give love, you'll receive love. And I think that for me, that is probably single-handedly the most important thing I can attribute to where I am in my grief process, that I'm doing all right, because I love so many people and I spend so much time with so many people that I love their company and I love them. And so I receive a lot of love. And for me, that's been a necessary condition for me to be where I am today. I think that everybody grieves differently, but when you go into a mindset of shutting yourself out a little bit and not finding the ability to surround yourself with people, that breaks the feedback loop of receiving the love that you need, because you're not giving it out to other people. And so for me, I've tried to continue to live that part of my life that Casey and I did together, where we were always thinking about who we hadn't seen, who we need to see, what they have going on in their lives, what we can do to help them or be there for them. And continuing to do that over the last year has meant that I feel love from so many people, and people want to talk to me about how I'm doing, because I'm putting myself out there and being there for that.
Yeah, I had to break down that mentality myself after my dad passed, and thinking I was so independent and I thought I didn't need anybody's help. But when he passed and how many people came out of the woodworks and wanted to like help me and like pour into me. And unfortunately, I had no recollection on how many people loved me and loved my dad until he passed. And you have to let that in, especially people who are, I think, primary caregivers and they're hyper independent and they're like, I can do this all myself. And then for people to like want to come into your life and say, I want to help you. I love this person too. This is the only way I know how to like express that love that I have for them, for the parts of them that are left, which in my case for my dad was us and my brother and sister. And that's a hard thing to break down, is like you lose somebody and you're so heartbroken and shattered, and then people want to pour love into you.
Yeah. And it's more important to work on that mindset the further away you get from that day. You know, the first month, 2 months, you know, people are going to be all about helping you. 8 months, 10 months, 2 years after, like, it's not that people go on with their lives. I think about Casey every day throughout the entire day. And I can't expect somebody else to feel that way or have those thoughts. But by having those human interactions with people, you're able to refill that love that you feel.
I was definitely like a Kendall, like very independent, not asking for support. I think it's only the last 2 years I've actually been better about that. But I do think that because I had so many people die, people didn't know what to do. I'm getting better at it, I think, now. But it was definitely something where I'm like, okay, don't look at me. This is like some shitty shit. I don't know what this is. And I think some people felt that too. Like they just didn't know what to do. It's like, how do you even broach the subject of like, how are you doing? When I didn't even know what I was doing. So I just like tried to act okay. But yeah, your process definitely sounds healthier. So one thing we like to do every episode is to include a small grief challenge. So for all the listeners, Joseph, what's one small practice you'd recommend to help someone give themselves permission to feel joy this week?
I would say, you know, call somebody, talk to somebody, and you know, share how you're really doing with somebody. People love that honest conversation. And you know, on the backside of that is joy. And it is a recognition that we are alive and we should be thankful for that, and we should do fun things. And so for me, I love talking to people, and I think that can really help finding the joy in life.
I'm bad at phone calls, but
This is a reoccurring thing of people being like, we need to talk on the phone more. Like, because it's that connection. It's like even if you're far away from people, there's still that line is still open.
Yeah.
And so for the listeners who are listening now, we want to hear your little moments of joy too. So you can DM us, you can tag us, you can email us, and then we can share them on a future episode. So Joe, how do you help Annie carry her grief while also showing her that it's okay to laugh and play amongst all the grief that she's feeling as well?
The thing that I focus on the most for her is to show her that we're strong and that we can get through the life that we have now, that we can get through it, and we can get through it together. We're going to continue to do activities. We're going to continue to be there for people. We're going to continue to just show up every day and do the things that we said that we were going to do. And so for me, that's what drives me now with Annie, is to make sure that she knows that we can be strong. And that's all on me to do. She's looking for me to make sure that she knows that. And so that's my focus on her grief journey, to make sure that she knows that we can still have an awesome life together and show up and work hard and have fun. And that's really my focus with her.
Yeah, I think it's all you can do for a kid who's trying to just figure it out as you go. That there's strength in recognizing the grief is there and recognizing that life is still meant to be lived, even if the people you love might not be here. That strength will carry and like ripple throughout her life.
Yeah. Over the last weekend, I had a wedding that I went to. Which weddings are weird.
Weddings are weird.
They're
hard.
Weddings are a little different now. Casey and I were best friends, and we had a beautiful wedding, and so weddings now are a little different. But I went to a wedding last weekend and met a woman who is in remission from lymphoma, had a stem cell transplant, and you know, I talked to her and her husband, and we cried, and she had survivor's guilt, didn't know what to say to me, which That's one thing that's kind of hard for me to understand. I get where she's coming from, but I wish that survivors knew that the people that didn't survive want them to survive and are
Yeah.
happy that they have survived. But we had a great conversation, and I told Annie about it, that I met this woman who's battling, a similar cancer to that mom had. And I think that it's good for her to hear those things and to see that we can root for and cheer for people that are going through a lot of the same emotions that we have.
I think those conversations are really important to have. So you touched on it a little bit, but how do you prioritize Annie's healing alongside your own? I know that you said she goes to therapy, you have a lot of open conversations, but what other ways do you prioritize your healing together?
Gosh, I wish I had more examples for you, but I mean, the things that just kind of come to my mind would be that I always make sure that Annie sees my raw emotion about it. She used to really get uncomfortable when I would cry about mom or see other people cry about mom. And I've just decided just to, not shy away from that. And so I can think of a few examples. With Casey's memorial money that we received, we donated it to a local preschool that Annabelle went to that was amazing. And Casey's sister Taylor now works at and her kids go to. And they took the money and made this beautiful garden at the school. And, they named it Casey's Place of Play. So, not too long ago, that was in August, they opened it up, um, and I had to talk about Casey and why we picked Prusel, and I cried the entire time. But I think that those are the things that are good for. I think it's good for Annie to be there for that. And I think she's only 7, and so I don't think her emotional portfolio isn't as great as an adult. But I think those are the moments that I think are huge for her and will be important, for her as she continues to live out her own life.
Yeah, a huge part of prioritizing healing is also prioritizing living. At the same time, not ignoring the grief while it's there. Annie still has lived like an amazing life in the past year. Like, even though it's been hard and difficult, she's done so many different things. She's experienced so many different things. And I think that's so important. She can look back on the year and it be really hard, but also so much happiness. And I think that's a good lesson for grief in general, is they can still exist together. And I think by prioritizing that is going to be something that Annie really appreciates as she gets older and looks back at this like really difficult time.
Yeah, and it's so hard to be a single parent. Even without death, and I have a lot of things to juggle, and I think sometimes that I don't know what grief would have been like if Casey had passed away before we had Annabelle, but I know it'd be a lot different. And so there is a double-edged sword of this type of grief, that it's so real and painful in the sense of Annie never seeing her mom again, but it's so grounding, I guess, for me, that I just really only have one purpose now, and that's to make sure that she still reaches her full potential as a human being, despite this. And so making memories and experiencing new things with her, it's a must for us.
Yeah, at the Children's Grief Center, it's a big conversation with the parents around, should I even express grief, or should I even cry in front of my child? Like, they're already going through enough, and should I, as a parent, contribute or add to that? And the Grief Center is really good about expressing to the parents as well, like, you are grieving as well as your child, and your child shouldn't be defaulting and locking away parts of their grief and their emotion because they're watching their parent go through this too. And they're very open about and giving tools to parents, saying that crying is a part of it, anger is a part of it, frustration, the confusion of it all, being honest about that grief journey with the parents as well as the kids, and that the kids understand that, and the kids have a range of understanding that I think a lot of adults, we kind of default and think that they wouldn't understand, but they understand a lot more than adults give kids credit. So for you, what have you learned about modeling grief and joy for your daughter and through this relationship in the past year?
I've learned that in experience with Annie, that kids do, at least in her case, don't want to see their parents sad. And so they do try to avoid sharing their own emotions because they don't want to put that on their parents. Like I said, she's not as open about it as I wish she would be sometimes, but we're working on it. Just a few therapy sessions ago, leading up to Casey's anniversary, we talked about therapy and that sharing those feelings, and she cried a lot because she was very, very nervous about it. And then that night, we came home and she, all on her own, like read a couple books, kids' books on grief from her room, which was so proud of her about. So that was something that I didn't really fully understand, the way that the kids would try to protect their parents by not sharing those emotions. And my first experience, I guess, with learning that was, I think it was on September 29th is when we had Casey's memorial, which was amazing. And it was just the way that she would have wanted it. But my grief counselor at the time was talking about, he's like, well, what's your plan with Annie that day? I was like, well, shit, I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. And he said, just let her do whatever the hell she wants. You know, people are going to be coming up to you. And if she wants to run around with her friends and not be there for that, just that was the first time I ever really thought about that.
Yeah, I think that's a good advice from the grief counselor to allocate space and time for the child to just feel what they need to feel in those really heavy days where those are going to be big emotions. I mean, they're big emotions for adults. And then imagine like a kid who doesn't quite understand the complexity of all of this. And they're experiencing those large emotions too. And I think so often adults are trying to like tell them, this is how you should be feeling at this time. And as we all know here, grief is not prescriptive by any sense. So letting a kid just do what they need to do in that time to just start beginning that process, however that might look for them.
Yeah, and you know, I've run into cases over the last year of Annie was doing something I didn't like. The default being, well, it's okay, man. She's going through a lot. And I'm like, fuck that. No, I'm her dad. Stop doing that shit. The fuck? You know, what are you gonna have this for the rest of your life? You're gonna use this crutch that your mom died? Like, come on now. Let's go. Knock it off. So there's a couple sides to that.
I think it's a hard balance, right? Because you need someone to push you often to like not get stuck in that. And I think especially as like a young child, you can use that as a crutch in terms of like, I'll act however I want because of this hard thing. But that can also carry on into adulthood, right? Because you're like, I have an excuse. And sometimes I think like, yeah, you know, I have an excuse. Although me and Kendall always say like, we always try to be nice people when like we could not be. I don't think it really ends well when you use that as a crutch in general. But I think that is a good way. You have to like push through it because you don't want that to be your default.
Yeah, I try and tell my brother and sister, like at the beginning when they were trying to use that as an excuse to behave in a way, and I'm like, you're not a victim of this situation. Like, I'm not going to let you use the passing of your father to get away with things. Like, you are stronger than that and you're better than that and you know better. And you will be better because of this, but I'm not going to let you victimize yourself just because something sad happened in your life. Sad things happen to everybody. We have to be better people. And that's just, you know, us in our daily, everyday lives. Like we should all try to be better people, regardless of the circumstances.
Yeah, that week after Casey's death, Annie didn't go to school. And then the following Monday, she went back to school. And people would ask me like, oh, is Annie's going back to school? And you don't know. Are they asking because they are just curious? Are they asking because they're trying to figure out whether you're doing the right thing? I don't know. But for me, it was always clear. Yeah, she's going back to school. That's what her mom would want her to do. Go back to school. And that was really hard for her to go back to school. But you got to go.
So, what advice would you give to another single dad who is in the early stages of loss
Or
and
mom.
or mom, and try to take care of their kids while also grieving?
I am the beneficiary of all the hard shit we did 15 years ago, which was or over the last however long, which is showing up for people and doing the right thing and being there for things that people want you there for and doing things that they don't expect you to do. Relationships are probably my most important thing in my life and always have been. And you never know when loss is going to happen. None of us know when we're going to feel that pain. And I hope for everybody that it's far out and it's in the way that they scripted in their head, where their parents die when they're 90 years old and nothing ever happens to their children. We know that that's not the case for a lot of us. And so my life advice to anybody is you need to maximize as many deep relationships that you can have with people as possible. And that's before you need them. My week looks like Casey's parents help out tremendously. They're a staple in my life, and I'll take care of them forever. Casey's sister is an amazing person who is the one that most closely gives Annabelle that motherly love that she needs. I'm so grateful that they live in Iowa City. So during the week, Annabelle, on Mondays, Grandpa Harris picks her up from school and they hang out. We have dinner there. And then on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we have a couple young girls that are in college that help with Annie. And then we pepper in other people on Thursdays and Fridays if needed. But all of that is because of the shit that we did before, And so now I get to reap the massive benefits of all of that. So I don't know if that's really a clear answer of what to do, for parents right after something like this happened. But for me, I couldn't manage the life that I have still to this day without that. I mean, last night I had bowling league from 6:30 to 9:30. Well, somebody's got to put Annabelle to bed. It all trickles down from how many meaningful relationships that you can have with people, and that's what it's all about. There's like I don't need to get all fucking wonky on you, but there's like a real famous Harvard study, like a longitudinal study. They followed people for decades, and the people that were happiest were the people that had the most close, meaningful relationships. And without that, fuck, I don't know how I would do it. I don't.
I've said many times, like, I was very closed off after loss. I think also when people disappoint you, because, I mean, it's hard. Like, people don't know what to do when you lose that many people. I didn't know what to do. And my favorite people are gone. But I closed myself off. But I think you always model, like, how nice it is. And I do know that it's nice to, like, connect with people and love people again. But I think you always do such a great job of modeling how important it is. And I know it is, and I try to prioritize it. But it is something where I think it's a work in progress.
Yeah, you guys have talked about it, and other people have to me too. And I've never had the reaction of when somebody says something to me that it didn't feel well. A lot of people don't know how to talk to people about fucking anything, let alone grief, let alone, like if somebody sends me a text, hope you're doing well, I know that they just truly mean, like, I hope you're doing well. And not like, well, Jesus, don't they fucking know that my wife just fucking died? That's fucking crazy. Without death, you don't have life. So it is the other side of the coin. I've really tried to make sure that I understand that people are just trying to be good.
Yeah, people pulling from good intent and just trying to do what they can with what they got. It kind of goes into our next little portion of our little joy spotting segment, where we just try to highlight some of the joys that we have this week rather than focusing on so much sad things in our lives all the time. And so I'll kick it off. And I wrote something here clearly, but I want to change my answer. It goes off of
No,
what
don't
you're
do
talking
that.
about. No, this is better actually. That my joy this week is that I'm in Florida with my best friends, and these are the friends that were with me through literally the hardest parts of my grief. And I'm gonna literally start crying right now. But like, these were the friends that, like, I've been friends with them for forever, but that they invested so much into me when I was at my lowest. And my dad passed away 5 years ago, and my best friend has had a baby this year. And it's just really sweet to see, like, a whole different spin in our friendship. Instead of one of us just trying to survive and deal with grief and loss, that there's now and a lot of laughs. I don't know if you can hear the baby in the background, but it's such a bright time. And I'm really so happy they stuck with me in my darkest time so I could be here in my best friend's brightest time. And just kind of like you said, it's all kind of cyclical, and without death, we don't have life. And so I'm constantly reminded of what a blessing it is to survive the darkest times with my best friends, but also go through really beautiful times with them as well. But Joe, do you want to kick us one of your joys that you've had this week?
Well, I haven't had it yet, but today, one of the high schools here in town where Annabelle will go to high school, it's their homecoming. And so there's a homecoming parade tonight. The elementary schools walk in the parade. And so I'm pumped to
That's so fun.
walk in the parade with Annabelle this evening and throw out candy and stuff. It'll be a blast.
I feel like my answer was just going to be that it was sunny in San Francisco. So sweet. Which, if you live in San Francisco,
Hey,
there's no sun right now. It is back to fog. But I'll expand my answer a little bit. I'll just say in the past month, I feel like I kind of went into be a little bit of a recluse. And in the past, I don't know, month, I went to LA and I went to visit my friend. We went to the Jonas Brothers concert, and then I'm going to that New York brand trip, and I went to a really fun wine event and did fun things last weekend. And I feel like I'm just kind of doing fun things again and socializing and reconnecting with people. Even going to LA, it was a friend that she also lost her mom this past year. Her death anniversary is very close to Casey's, actually. And we hadn't seen each other since her mom passed. And I've known her her whole life. So I think it's just really nice to actually spend time with her, spend time with her daughter, have so much fun. And it just was a very fun experience. So I'll say there's just been a lot more joy in the past month by actually reconnecting people and doing more things and staying consistent.
good for you too. And good for you for doing this podcast and living in your grief and helping all of us that are in that. You guys, you two of you do a great job.
Thank you.
We mentioned it before that I think it's not going to make the recording, but today is actually the day that Joseph reached out to us about being on our podcast. Is actually today, a year ago. And that was not planned whatsoever. We found out right before. So just a full circle moment.
Full circle.
Okay, Joe, the last question. What is a takeaway that you wish to share to other single parents out there who have lost a spouse, and something that they can take in their own grief journey?
My favorite quote now of all time, and I can't remember who wrote it, which maybe I should if I'm going to say it's my favorite quote of all time, but it's "The barn burned down, now I can see the moon." And I think for parents that it's really important for them to show their children that shit happened and life jumps out at us and life is hard, but there is joy in life, and getting through that and with strength and resolve is so important for your kids to see that we can. And I don't like the phrase move on, because that's not it. We're not moving on. Maybe we're moving into the shit, but also life. And so when I look at Annie and I see her continued joy in life, there's a lot of it that was her and her personality. But I think I'm naive if I don't take some of the credit that, we get up every day and we do life and we do it together. And I think that is just really important.
I went ahead and looked it up for you. It's a haiku by Mizuata Masahide, a Japanese poet. Yeah, it's from the 17th century, called "The Barn Burned Down."
Oh, wow.
So it's like a haiku. You just quoted a poem right out there.
There you go.
I've never heard that one.
I know why I don't know the author's name.
Yeah, I think Mizuzata. But yeah, Japanese haiku.
All right, I'll just say it's a Japanese haiku.
That's a good one, actually. Me and Kendall always say you don't move on, but you move forward. I think it's taking those little steps forward in life. On our grief journey, you don't ever move on from your grief. You don't ever stop missing or loving your people that you don't get to do life with, but we're still here. So we need to try to live the most beautiful life possible. And that's what the season's about, is like figuring that out and sharing people's stories of how they're moving forward with their grief and how they're trying to do the best they can. And it's not a perfect journey. It's still sad, but there's also a lot of happiness and joy that can happen. And I think having these conversations helps people, because I kept all my grief inside and I had a hard time thinking like, I'm not supposed to be this sad about losing my parents and my sister. And it's like, no, that is really sad and heavy. And especially my sister, like we were so freaking close that it's something that like I will cry in 2 seconds. Like I already feel it in my chest of just like saying that I don't get to do life with her. But I'm trying. And so I'm just trying to move forward. And that's what this podcast is, and having these conversations. So thank you so much for coming on our podcast. It's been a year in the making, exactly on the date, which is really funny. We are just inspired by like your story and how I feel like how resilient and positive you've been for you, but also for Annie. And I hope that inspires other parents, especially dads, because not bashing dads, but just we see a lot of stories about men that won't share their feelings. So I think this is a great story to show other people like it's okay. Your kids and you will benefit by being open about how hard it is, but also by how good you can still make your life. As we said in the beginning, like walking side by side, grief with joy.
Yes, well, thank you. Really enjoyed it. Keep going, and you guys are doing a great job.
Thanks so much, Joseph.
Thank you.
Okay, Kendall. So what is one takeaway that you have from this conversation with Joseph J?
Yeah, 2 things really stood out to me. One, like the reminder, we didn't choose to have these things happen to us, but they did, and it sucks, but we have to deal with it. And the only way to deal with it is to go through it. And I think Joe really exemplifies that. Like, we wouldn't ever ask for any of these things to happen to us, but if they're going to happen, we might as well put a smile on our face and just trudge on through. And the other one, which I'm glad he made a emphasis on this towards the end, is like the importance of having community and the importance of having people who are truly just invested in the good things in your life and altruistically adding and supplementing the joy we should be experiencing. And how just I know that for myself. So I'm just very grateful in my sense for the people that I've built strong relationships with and that they've carried me through dark times. And I hope that I could do the same for them in their dark moments as well. But what about you, Rachel?
I think very similarly. I think especially the community aspect, he does such a great job of pouring into the community and also receiving. And I know that, and we talk about it all the time. The most important thing is the people and the memories and the love. I think sometimes it's harder to put into practice all the time. And I think after being so closed off for so long, not that I didn't have moments, but I think it's definitely something where I'm like trying to just step back into that of really immersing myself into building a community. I think the other thing is, which I think I had a hard time earlier on, is kind of that just do it attitude, where it's like you just have to kind of break the ice. And I think that's a hard sometimes decision to make, right? When is the right time? And how much time do you need to give yourself to sit in your sadness, to sit in that pain? And then when do you need to be like, well, I need to go back into the world? And I think that's a hard thing to decide sometimes. And sometimes you have a hard time deciding it for yourself, because if you stay out of the world too long, then when you step back in, it feels like a foreign land. So I really resonated that of like that attitude of like, sometimes you just need to do the hard thing to keep your life moving forward. And it's really easy to get stuck. And we've talked about that before. So I think those 2 things, I think, were the biggest takeaways.
As always, we're not professionals, just professional grievers in our own journeys, learning alongside with you each episode. So we'll see y'all next week.
See you next week. Bye.